Sergey, sir, it's great to have you back on the road to autonomy. You offer incredible insight. You're the world's best sponsor, so thank you for sponsoring this week in the autonomy economy. It's powered by Koop. It makes it happen. Today, we're not here really to talk about insurance, Sergey. We're here to talk about the shift that's happening in the autonomous vehicle market. It's moving towards fleets. What's causing this shift?
Thank you for having me, Grayson, and thanks for producing the best content in the autonomous vehicle industry. Well, to answer your question, the simple answer is economics, and I think it's finally happening because people realized that scaling autonomous vehicles to tens of thousands of vehicles is going to involve a lot of money, and there is not a single party that can handle all of that, even if you have all the money in the world, like Google. So now we are finally seeing a move towards autonomous vehicle fleets. And, back in I'm not going to say back in the day, but a couple of years ago, if you recall, there was a GM Cruise presentation. Unfortunately, Cruise is no longer with us, but I remember they had like a chart where they showed the plan, how they're going to scale. And the first phase was Cruise owned vehicles, operated, etc. And then there was like a hockey stick with third-party fleets going like this, vertical. And I think we're just at the beginning of that hockey stick, and fleets will make it happen.
Who do you see operating the fleets, owning the fleets, managing the fleets? Because the more I research this, the more I study this, it seems like it's a whole ecosystem is going to evolve around fleets.
The fleet model is insanely versatile. Before I answer your question about autonomous vehicles specifically, just to put some numbers in perspective, I'm not the first one to talk about this, but autonomous vehicles might resemble the airline industry, where you have a handful of manufacturers, let's say Boeing and Airbus, and then you have a lot of airline fleets or operators. I actually looked up some stats for the audience to put things in perspective. There are two major commercial airline manufacturers, Boeing and Airbus. And you want to guess how many airline operators in the world?
10 to 12 majors?
In total, it's 3,500. But top 100, they make up the most of the market share, of course. But it's 3,500 operators. There's probably almost 4,000 airports. So it just tells you that how diversified the fleet model is. And I think the same might happen with autonomous vehicles, where you'll have a handful of manufacturers, maybe a couple in the US and maybe a couple in Europe, a couple in Asia. And then there is going to be thousands of fleets all around the world doing all kinds of things. And my bet that most likely there are going to be new entrants, like pure play autonomous vehicle fleets who will be tech first, who will have not just the ability to, clean vehicles, change tires, check the hardware, but also do the software updates, do the vehicle retrievals and things like that. And there are going to be legacy players in the kind of passenger vehicle space. It could be a company like Hertz, but I don't know if they're doing anything there. In the trucking space, it's of course way more laid out. The fleet model is going to be like big fleet operators and owners there. So I'll bet my money on pure play AV fleets. I think this model is going to be exciting. And I know like Waymo has already made a move in that direction, which is great to see.
You mentioned Hertz. The CEO of Hertz is a wonderful gentleman, actually a listener of the podcast, and it's been on the podcast several times. Gil West, former COO of Delta, also COO of Cruise. Mr. West's specialty is fleets. I wouldn't be surprised at some point when he gets rid of the legacy architecture at Hertz to see him potentially move into fleets. Staying on the airline theme, do you see a point where we have the big three in America? You have United, you have American, you have Delta, and then you have smaller ones with JetBlue, and then you have regionals. Do you see the autonomous vehicle fleets potentially evolving that way? We have a big three or big four, and then you have a lot of smaller, let's call it regional players that fall in below that?
If we reason by analogy, the answer is yes. So most likely there's going to be a handful of big AV fleet operators. They will probably control most of the locations, most of the market. They're going to have relationships with big ride-sharing platforms, and we can touch upon that separately. And then there are going to be like local, maybe even hyper-local fleets that will operate with a specific user experience or a specific location in mind. For example, there might be a player who maybe has Waymo vehicles and serves suburban areas and they have the garaging location somewhere in the suburban area, so the vehicles don't have to go back to the city and then go like 20 miles out to, you know, pick up and drop off passengers. Like you can service the suburban areas, but then of course the economics have to work. Or you can go and do some private service. For example, you might service private corporations. And if you are, let's say, PepsiCo or Google or ExxonMobil, and you have private campuses and you have employees here and there, you know, instead of the shuttle, you can build a fleet that will manage the employee service, robotaxi service right there. And, you know, it could be all kinds of things. So I think the opportunity for smaller fleets to appear is going to be great in autonomous vehicle space. Of course, we're going to have problems with like financing and most likely insurance, but all of that is solvable.
When you look at the QSR, the quick service restaurant industry, you have McDonald's, you have Wendy's, you have Chick-fil-A, all taking different models where McDonald's franchisees, the real estate is owned by McDonald's. Wendy's, the real estate is owned by individual franchisees. And if you look at the Chick-fil-A model, here, if the franchisee is just basically operating it, very low cost up front for them, and the profits are going back to Chick-fil-A. So do you see similar models like that evolving? Because the cost to fund this is going to be astronomical. If you take McDonald's model, Waymo could be the real estate owner and the franchisee could be the operator. Could that possibly work just because based on Alphabet's balance sheet?
I think in the short term, by the short term, let's take the next 3 to 5 years, so until like 2030 or so, Waymo will probably own a considerable autonomous vehicle real estate, meaning vehicles, both for testing commercial operations, and they could have a fleet partner still own the vehicles, and they can afford this. But if you think about scale, I think scaling, it's not just tens of thousands of vehicles, it's hundreds of thousands of vehicles, maybe even millions of vehicles. I don't think there is a balance sheet in the world that can afford that. So you'll have to figure out how to attract capital to this. Now, there are two ways how I envision the world will work in the autonomous vehicle fleet space, is that there are going to be fleets with a lot of money who can own those vehicles. Okay, well, they can buy them or they can actually finance them. They're going to go take a loan out and pay monthly payments to the bank. So do the financing on the leasing model. Or there could be another party in between the developer and the fleet that is only going to be the owner, and they're just going to buy the vehicles. Okay, it's not going to be a bank, but it's going to be more like, you know, a third party, like an investment company. And that investment company will have a motivation of owning the cash flow coming from the autonomous vehicle business. And then there are a bunch of things they can do with that, but I think it's going to be two of those models. Most likely in the short term, we're going to see some big fleet players appearing, and they'll just have enough money to buy AVs or to finance or lease them, work it out with a bank. And then right after that, we're going to have a new party appear with a business model of just owning autonomous vehicles for the sake of cash flow generation. But that's going to happen closer to the moment when there is some market penetration and cash flow maturity so that you can predict the cash flows. Then the investment management companies will flock into the market as well. That's my view.
That your view is spot on. That opens the view to what I've spoken quite a bit about is autonomous vehicle REITs. If you look at it, the cell phone towers are in REITs, real estates are in REITs, and investors like that because of the free cash flow that they spit off. What then? Let's throw another monkey into the wrench here. What happens when an individual starts buying up vehicles and wanting to put them into service? Let's say an individual, either through an LLC, pools money, buys 100, buys 1,000, says, okay, I got them, and puts them onto the network. How does that happen? How does that work?
Well, if that happens, then the individual will become a fleet owner operator. So, I mean, you can have a couple of vehicles or you can have a couple hundreds of vehicles. You become a fleet owner operator. So everything we discussed applies to that person, especially if you have a actual company form. I guess, the challenge is going to be, okay, if I decide, let's say I have few $1 million laying around and I want to open a hyper localized autonomous vehicle service. I want to work with Waymo. I want to have my thing available on, let's say, Via app, maybe because it's simpler to work with them and they service the suburban area. Okay, I have that. Now I need to go figure out the contract with Waymo, with Via. I need to figure out where I'm going to garage this. I need to figure out my scope of responsibilities. Okay, what am I supposed to do? Is it just the hardware maintenance or do I need to do anything at the software level? I need to hire staff. The staff needs to be knowledgeable about how to operate autonomous vehicles. I need to have a tool where I can manage all of my AVs. Am I going to have control over routing, or is it going to be done fully autonomously? Okay, if an autonomous vehicle gets stuck or gets into an accident, who's going to retrieve that vehicle? As a person, you have to figure all of that out. And most likely early on is going to be challenging because there are going to be no suppliers in that space. But I think it's going to develop pretty fast. So you'll have options to work with. And then at the end of the day, you're going to get a check from your autonomous vehicle operations, making money for you. But everything I described has to be figured out. It's great to see there are some early entrants in that space who are already making the first step. But I think there is a long way to go before a person will be able to deploy a couple $1,000,000 in a way where it's not going to be a nightmare for the person.
What if the individual just says, I have the balance sheet. I want to purchase vehicles. I don't want to manage them. I don't want to operate them. I just want to collect a dividend for the operations. Where do they go? Do they call a Move, or do they call an Uber? Do they call a Lyft? Where do they go?
Good question. Well, definitely not going to call Uber or Lyft, because I think Uber and Lyft, they will be more like the customer access platform, for those fleets, because they own the customer base. And I think Move probably is more vertically integrated, meaning that the Move will do those things itself and will want to make money itself. There might be like a new kind of company that will provide, that will. So if you decide to deploy capital and you want to be an AV fleet owner operator, you might have like a third party who can provide you with the infrastructure for it. So it's like plug and play solution. It's like white label fleet management model, but I don't think anybody is doing this. And kind of makes sense, because I don't think we're there yet that people will be able to just take, 100 or maybe 50 to 100 vehicles and do that like as a side business. But I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. Actually, a company like Move might be positioned for it because they'll have all the infrastructure. They might just decide to spit it out in more like white labeled way or something like this. Interesting to see what is going to happen. But honestly, I don't think it's going to happen soon. I think we have to reach a certain maturity point until individuals will be able to deploy a couple $1,000,000 for a hyper localized AV service.
There's chatter brewing for this on X. There's individuals that have been longtime Tesla investors that have the balance sheet based on their Tesla investments to finance a fleet of cybercabs or Model Ys, which we learned on the earnings call that they're going to deploy. If they do that, who's going to clean them? Who's going to make sure that they meet the safety inspections? Who's going to make sure the tires are rotated? Who's going to handle I'll call the nitty gritty details that have to be done to truly operate them?
We need to make a very important distinction. There is a Tesla world and there is a non-Tesla world. Up to this point, we were talking about non-Tesla world, okay, which I think probably most of the world will operate with that model. Tesla is special because Tesla does everything in a vertically integrated way. So I think if the original vision of Elon comes to fruition, where even if you have your own personal vehicle, just one vehicle, you'll be able to make it a part of the network. That is going to be different from how the rest of the world is going to do it. Just to be extremely clear, okay? I think those two models are in competition. Both of them can exist. Both of them can be worth trillions of dollars, but they're different. And with Tesla, the way I envision this is going to happen, based on the public information available, is that Tesla is going to become like a master fleet operator. It's a master fleet operator where you're going to have individuals, and those individuals can literally like come and go from the platform. But Tesla is going to become a fleet owner operator. Okay. So when the vehicle is in autonomous mode on the Tesla network, it's a part of a Tesla fleet. Tesla is going to be responsible. Okay. And then when it's off, it's going to be your vehicle. You go clean it, you go fix it up, and then you bring it back. Something like this. But this model is going to be exotic. It's going to be unusual. And I personally can't wait to give it a try. I think it's going to be awesome. I just hope it works out the way it's intended.
Could you see Uber or Lyft either acquire a company or set up a subsidiary to mimic this model if it is proven to be successful over time?
I think when it comes to Tesla, it's going to be challenging. Other vehicles, sure, but are there personally owned vehicles that are capable of self-driving other than Tesla out there? I don't think so.
Not yet, but there's a big but, and this threw me for a loop on Alphabet's Q1 earnings call last week. Sundar Pichai opened the door to the the potential of a personally owned Waymo vehicle. If that happens, the technology's been proven. You got a very clear path there.
Let's assume, just a thought experiment, let's assume the cost of all the hardware that goes into making a Waymo possible becomes so cheap that Waymo is just a little bit more expensive than a camera-only vehicle, okay? And let's assume that the computing costs also become very, very cheap, meaning that the cost doesn't become an issue. I think the biggest hurdle will be the integration with the OEM. Because, okay, if you want to sell personally owned vehicles and have them Waymo install, you'll need to figure out an OEM to integrate with. That integration could be a hell of a job, in my opinion. And I know that OEMs are legacy OEMs, meaning that their architecture and their tech stack is not the latest. How much of a battle that is going to be, how much time this is going to take, I'm concerned about that. And by the time they figure it out, Tesla is going to be running, hundreds of thousands of AVs on its platform. So it is possible. I just think, the integration is going to be messier than we think. And by the time they figure it out, the market might be taken in a good part by Tesla. So that's just my concern. Yeah, I might be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it's a quick thing to figure out, but something is telling me it's not.
You're right about a lot of what you said. If you look at the integration, so we have public statements that Waymo will take possession of the Waymo Hyundai vehicles in 2026 for testing. They're being built in Savannah, Georgia. If you look at the plant and you look at schematics, there's ability for that plant to make personally owned vehicles. But, and I say this with a big caveat here, Hyundai has a company called Motional. And Motional, we do not know anything besides Aptiv pulling out of the joint venture. I've said publicly, when you actually were on the podcast, that would become a personally owned vehicle for Hyundai. Do we get to a point inside of Hyundai where Waymo's competing against their internal Motional stack for personally owned AVs?
Good question. I will say, based on the public information about Hyundai and Waymo, I know that Hyundai provides the vehicle, right? So when you have autonomous Ioniq 5s, Hyundai is not going to make money from the software. So it's just going to be Hyundai is going to do what it does the best. It's manufacture vehicles. I'm pretty sure Hyundai would love to generate, highly marginal revenue from the software business at some point. But they can't do it with Waymo. They have to do it themselves. So the best bet is to do it through Motional. So then, if you have two vehicles, one with Waymo stack, one with Motional stack, they're going to compete. I honestly, I'm pretty sure it's probably more complicated than this. But personally, if let's say Hyundai wants to move into the personal AV space and they want to make money from the subscription, AV service subscription, then they'll have to figure it out themselves. And maybe they'll have a better chance at delivering this than doing this through the integration with Waymo. Honestly, hard to tell. It's just kind of guessing at this point. But yeah, even in the best case scenario, if let's say Waymo decides to enter the personal market space, they figure it out with Hyundai, which I'm pretty sure it's not gonna be that easy. By that time, it can be years, years from today.
It's years. But if you look at OEMs getting tied up with autonomous driving developers, Nissan has now a newly announced partnership with Wave. That gets very interesting. Neuro is out there in the market, and at some point, I fully expect them to get an OEM deal. Do you see a point where all the major OEMs at some point in the future, not asking for a timeline here, have an autonomous driving partner because of what they're going to see for the demand that's coming from the market where consumers want this technology?
Probably, yes. I think if you're an OEM, and I unfortunately didn't work at big OEMs, I wish I had more of a corporate insight and see how boards think. But there are the future is going to be somewhat binary. You either going to do autonomy or not. And if you don't do autonomy, you're just going to default to what you have done previously, is that you're going to manufacture vehicles. Okay. And if you do autonomy, that is going to be a heavy R&D ticket that you have to pay for, but it might pay off because you will become not just the manufacturer, you're also going to become the service provider, and the service equals software as a service, and software equals highly marginal revenue. So pretty much OEMs that decide to move in autonomous vehicle space, they definitely have a shot at being there in the future. And, I'm very bullish on Tesla, very bullish on Hyundai. I'm not sure about European ones, bullish on Chinese ones, 100%. Japanese ones seems to be making the right bet with Wave. But so, that's good. But let's say when you have a deal with Wave, or you have a deal with Waymo, or a deal with any other AV developer, how the OEM is going to make money from the software, that I'm not clear. So I guess we'll have to see. I guess nobody knows because nobody has done it before. And when we have a precedent, we'll know better. But I was pretty sure, just a quick comment, I'm pretty clear how Tesla is going to make money from this thing because it's vertically integrated, and you can just kind of see where Tesla's interest is and how they're going to compensate their network. When there is a developer and an OEM, and then there's going to be a fleet, that model makes sense, but I don't think we have had a precedent yet, so we do not know yet how the money is going to work out for OEM specifically.
We don't know how the money is going to work out yet, but we do know very clearly an ecosystem is going to emerge. You're going to have the OEM, you're going to have the autonomous driving developer, you're going to have the platform, the Uber or Lyft, and then you're going to have the management layer, and then after that, you're going to have the finance layer. Do you see specialty companies emerging on each piece of the layer to servicing that little niche, or do you see somebody trying to do a roll up and vertically integrate something?
We'll probably see both. I'm pretty sure there are going to be like auto financing companies who enter the autonomous vehicle space. They're going to be the new entrants who do just that. It's, that's how an industry emerges. You have a new technology. New technology provides a new way of doing things, totally new economics, maybe new user behavior. Then there are new entrants. Then some of them die. Some of them become big. Then the legacy entrants come in, and then they split the market in one or another way. But yeah, I'm honestly not too worried about financing. I think financing is, well, as long as you know or can predict the cost of the vehicle and all the hardware and the utilization of that vehicle, and of course, the location where and what kind of service is going to perform, I think you can model out the vehicle life cycle and how much money it can produce and stuff like that. I think that's pretty straightforward. I would say insurance is less straightforward, and insurance is going to be a huge component as well. But financing is something that I expect. There's probably already a company or two that can make this happen today.
You're going to get fragmentation, and that's really good for Uber. It's really good for Lyft because it talks about the value of their platform. You alluded to it, insurance. How the heck is this going to be insured? Do you have to develop at Koop? Do you have to develop new insurance underwriting techniques? Do you have to partner with the fleet manager, partner with the platform provider? How are you going to ensure this? I'll call it this evolving complex ecosystem.
Well, insurance is going to be a problem. And thankfully, there are people working on that problem. Not a lot, but, a couple is enough to change something like this. In the insurance industry, it's important to follow the model. We're going to have a bifurcation of the model where there's going to be an autonomous vehicle developer. It's the company that develops the software. They also develop the hardware necessary to make the self-driving possible. There is a lot that goes into how all those things work together. So take Waymo, right? That's Waymo. Waymo can figure out its insurance. It can be either self-insured, fully self-insured. It can be partially self-insured with some additional insurance purchased on top. And they can figure it out. It's for the most part going to be product liability. It can be product liability with a mix of like cyber liability and maybe some additional things here and there coverage-wise. Now let's take a look at a fleet. I think fleet is where we have like a huge hole when it comes to insurance. I'm a fleet owner operator. Let's say I buy those Waymos. They are on my balance sheet, and I'm going to provide a service, and I have a ability to provide the service in multiple cities. I have an ability to manage those vehicles in real time, and maybe I can do some many other things. Okay, but those are my vehicles. This is my service. I can't put those vehicles out without insurance. And the developer, Waymo, definitely doesn't want to expose themselves to something like this because, it's going to be a problem for their balance sheet. So I have to go purchase insurance. And I go to commercial auto carriers, and they're going to be like, Most of them will probably decline because they have no idea how to underwrite this. But some of them, which are willing to put out their commercial auto product, will probably rate it like a regular auto. And regular commercial auto insurance is literally insane. It can be not just thousands of vehicles; it could be tens of thousands of dollars per year per vehicle, and just economically, it's super expensive, especially in places like New York. Commercial auto is just bunkers. So, but it's not a human driver, you know? So, but the carriers will provide you the human rates. So it becomes a problem where it's Waymo software driving. They have the data that it's a much better driver than a human, but there is no insurance company that's willing to reflect that in their auto rate. So the economics of the autonomous vehicle fleet operator becomes kind of screwed just because of insurance. Just because of insurance. And I think insurance will be the major party pooper for autonomous vehicle fleets. So the way you figure it out is that you have to create a new product where it first has to be an auto product that will somehow reflect the fact that this is just the operator and the actual driving is done by the software, which is already insured by the Waymo. Of course, there has to be the relationship between the fleet and the developer to figure that component out. And then that auto has to be complemented with additional things like cyber liability or errors and emissions, or maybe umbrella policy, just to make sure if there is something happens and it's not covered by commercial auto, that there are additional lines of insurance you can pull into this so you are not exposed. It has to be a new auto product or like a significantly modified auto product with some complementary lines of business, and it doesn't exist today. And so far, I know only two parties in the world thinking about this, and one of them is Koop.
You're insuring the future, but we don't like party poopers on this. We like party animals. So I'm going to take it to the part. I'm going to go from the party pooper to the party animal line here because I got an idea that popped into my head, and you can say I'm crazy, but I'm going to throw it out at you. What if I purchase the autonomous vehicle? As part of that purchase, my insurance is bundled in, my fleet management partner is all bundled into that for one fee. You automate the whole process because if I have to go buy the AV from, I'm going to say the D word, the bad word, the dealer, and then I have to go deal with the rigmarole of dealing with insurance. If it's commercial insurance is horrible, trying to get auto insurance is horrible, especially in the state of Florida. You want to talk about one of the worst experiences. This site, and the prices vary. I want it all automated. Can Koop build a product that automates this entire process and let's call it you deliver AV service on a platter in a bundle?
Well, theoretically, we can. We'll become a different company, of course, if we were to do this. That goes way beyond insurance. But I got to tell you, putting together a tool where you can have your fleet operations, your financing, your insurance, it's all doable. The thing is, if those components are not figured out, then there is nothing to combine. So meaning that I think out of all of those things, insurance is the biggest problem. I can sell you the bundle or the combined tool if I don't have the insurance product underlying it. And so we come back to square one is that, okay, there is no insurance program that can support a pure play autonomous vehicle fleet operation today. So unfortunately, we're back to party pooper.
No, we're not going back to party. We're going to party animal here. We're not going to go hangover style, but we're going to stay on the party animal here. Because if you think about this, an autonomous vehicle will give you an immense amount of data. If you bundle the fleet partner, you will know the tires rotate, the seat belts work, that the treads are there. You'll get all that data. To me, if you put that into your actuary miles, that will help lower your risk because you're getting all the data to know that the vehicles are at tip-top shape. But can you automate that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, automating is not a problem. The data that gets generated by the vehicle, you can develop a pipeline of the data. It can feed directly into the actuarial model. You can develop beautiful dashboards that will tell you like real-time status of your vehicles and the risk profile and all of that. That's all doable. The challenge is when I say that the insurance product has to exist, we have to take that, go to the state departments of insurance and license that product. Because don't forget, insurance in the US is at the state level. There are 50 departments of insurance that you have to go through. And they have to look at this product and they're going to be like, okay, we need to put a stamp of approval on it. And it could be a notoriously slow and burdensome process. So, but until that's done, you will not be able to satisfy the local law, state law, which says that you have to have an auto insurance policy for a vehicle. And that is the most challenging part. So actually, the regulatory component is the most challenging part. I can tell you that we already have the product spec sitting ready to go. That's the regulatory component part. That's the most challenging. But once you pass that, and hopefully you pass that with, let's say, a big state like California, and then other states just copy California, then it becomes easy. Then you have a product specifically designed for autonomous vehicle fleets. You can bundle it up. It's going to be a great experience, and you're good to go. By the way, Tesla might have an easier time with it because Tesla most likely will deploy Tesla Insurance towards this. And they already have a file product, and I think they have a wiggle room where they can afford to take on fully autonomous vehicles. But they do it in a fully integrated way through their MGA, which will give them an advantage. For the rest of the world, we need to figure it out.
The only disappointment to Tesla insurance, I can't get it here in Florida. And as you know, you can't get it all 50 states because, as you clearly rightly said, it's regulated at state level. Let's hypothetically say, so Koop rolls out this product in partnership with an AV developer and a fleet management company. Could you just start with, say, Texas, California, and Florida, three of the largest markets for deployment of AVs, and then gradually build that product out as the AV fleet scales? Since on day one, let's call a spade, they're not going to be in all 50 states.
Yeah, it has to be state by state. And whichever partner we end up working with, this product is going to be an insane amount of effort to roll it out in all 50 states, and it's not needed. You have to follow the AV expansion. So if we have, let's say, if we know what the top states are going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, that's California, that's Texas, that's Florida, that's Arizona, maybe Nevada, I don't know, maybe Pennsylvania, Georgia, those states. You just get this thing licensed there, and you go from there. So yeah, it's the rollout can be staged for sure.
Could one of those potential partners be the car rental companies? I say this because they have experience in fleet management, they have experience in vehicle financing, they have experience in insurance. I've learned more about what happens when you have bad substances in a vehicle from the rental car industry than I've learned about anything else. That they really truly understand this. Could we? But I mean, I'll say this because there's precedent here. Avis had the original deal with Waymo for Phoenix. Enterprise Mobility. Thanks for listening, by the way. Thanks for being a subscriber to the newsletter. I'll highlight that there. They were investors in partner with Voyage back in the day. Hertz was doing deals. Could we see them potentially reemerge? And if they do, could you be their partner?
The short answer is absolutely. I think it makes a perfect partnership. Also, big players like Hertz and Avis, they not only have the expertise, they also have the real estate. So they already have the vehicle hubs developed. There is an ability for a vehicle to come in, to go out, and there is everything in between. And they already have the apps that they can leverage. And if you just figure out how to integrate the autonomous vehicles in there and maybe develop a special team for this, sounds like something they at least should be thinking about today. Maybe already somebody's working on this. But I would be shocked if a company like Hertz or Avis did not make a move in the autonomous vehicle fleet management space. I'll be shocked. It's like such a low-hanging fruit, such an obvious thing. We'll see. Maybe the new entrants will beat them to it, and then the Hertz will acquire the new entrants. But yeah, partnering with a fleet on figuring out a very painful insurance problem sounds logical.
Look at the real estate that the rental car companies have. They have prime real estate next to the airport. And as we know from the Uber and Lyft data, and we look at Waymo demand data, it's one of the most passenger rich areas to pick up and drop off or at airports. The fleet model is emerging, Sergey. What are some of the biggest challenges outside of insurance that have to be overcome for this model can scale?
There are two definitely on my mind. That's financing and insurance. And I'll say insurance is more painful than financing. Those are the ones that I'm familiar with, and those are the ones that our company is trying to help with. I can imagine, like, one potential challenge that I foresee is, okay, it's kind of, if you follow the incentives, the incentive of the autonomous vehicle developer is going to be making a lot of money from licensing the vehicles and generating software revenue. They'll probably want to push as much responsibility onto the fleet as they can. So the fleet needs to be able to take on that responsibility. It's not just the keeping up with the hardware. Maybe it could also be doing software updates. And updating the software might be tricky. How often do you do it? Do you have to check every single vehicle? What if there was an issue and stuff like that? So you have to become like a tech-enabled fleet manager. And I think from the talent and staffing perspective, that could be an interesting challenge to solve. But nothing that's impossible. That's the outside of financing and insurance. That's probably the only thing I envision there. But I'm pretty sure a company, let's say like Move, which is a pure play AV fleet manager in the US, I'm pretty sure they're going to figure it out.
I'll say this for the record: Move is a very, very interesting company. They have Uber is an investor. They're going to operate the Waymo fleet in Miami. They're going to operate it in Phoenix. They can take that whole fleet management layer and scale it. And then you could potentially, their biggest competitor that could emerge is FlexDrive, which is held inside of Lyft. And maybe you have a duopoly, unless Uber says we don't want to have a duopoly, and they go, and that they've historically done, they go and seed a couple other companies. Do you see that fleet management layer becoming highly, highly competitive over the next decade, and perhaps new companies emerging to challenge what Move is building?
Absolutely. Absolutely, yes. And going back to what we discussed earlier, if we think of the analogy, two airline manufacturers, 3,500 airline operators, maybe top 10 or top 50 own most of the market, but you have 50 that compete with each other. Probably a similar thing will emerge. There is also going to be competition, not in different parts of the world. So it could be a handful in the US, in Europe, Middle East, and Asia. And they might not overlap, but they're definitely going to compete with each other, especially if one decides to go global. So we want to have multiple fleet operators out there. I think competition is great. Who's going to end up winning or owning most of the market share? We yet to see. Is it going to be the first entrant like Move? Or is it going to be somebody who comes in later and provides like just an amazing product after first movers go through the trial and error? We yet to see. I guess the history will tell. But I'm 100% sure we're going to have lots of competition in that space.
Competition is great. Competition breeds innovation. Sergey, in your opinion, what is the future of autonomous vehicle fleets?
Future is bright. The future is autonomous. I love that tagline. I think the autonomous vehicle fleets will become the primary vessel for commercializing autonomous vehicle service. It just makes so sense. It's I'm not going to say it's simple, but from the economic standpoint, it's the best way you can do so you don't need to have too much capital concentrated with one company, and you have the separation of responsibilities. That makes so much sense. There is a reason why it happened in commercial auto, in trucking, in airline, and probably in other places that I'm not familiar with. But this is the most economically viable model.
Scalable. That's the bottom line. Embracing the fleet model for autonomy is scalable. The fleet model, furthermore, benefits Uber and Lyft because they're going to get fragmentation, and it's going to give Tesla a clear lane to take market share, which is going to raise questions. Is Waymo going to have to pivot as this all scales and fragmentation comes in the market? And no matter which way the market goes, you're going to have to insure it. And to our listeners and viewers, if you need great commercial insurance for robotics and autonomy, call Sergey at Koop. As I said, they are the best sponsor in the world. They sponsor This Week in the Autonomy Economy newsletter, so thank you. But outside of that, they write great insurance policies with really great prices, and it's a great team of people. Sergey, as we look to wrap up today's conversation, what would you like our listeners and viewers to take away with them?
I really hope that people try an autonomous vehicle service, and when they do that, they make their experience public, post on LinkedIn, post on X. I think the more of a network effect we can produce, the more of a mind space we can take, and it'll be really important for people to know that this is coming. And again, once you go autonomous, you don't go back. You have to try it for yourself. And I hope more people are talking about it.
We need more people to talk about it. I was out on a walk the other day, an older gentleman in his 70s, and we were talking about it. I'm not getting an AV. It's dangerous. I see that it's on the news. The news pushes propaganda about autonomy that's not real. It's fake news. What you need to do, get in an AV, experience it for yourself. And as Sergey said, take a photo, take a video, put it on X, put it on social media. Let the world know how great of an experience it is. Because the future is bright. The future is autonomous. The future is autonomous vehicle fleets. Sergey, as always, sir, thank you so much for coming on the road to autonomy.
Thank you, Grayson.